I remember like when I first got to Bolivia, it was so different. It was a total culture shock, and um, so I arrived in Santa Cruz, and all the new missionaries, we got our new companions in our area, you know, and then the next day we all were sent out to our area. And back in the day, that was before Santa Cruz had been split into the north and south, so it was all just one big mission. And some of the areas were like way far away, man. Like you had to fly in a plane for a couple hours. And that actually ended up being one of my first areas. I went down south to this little tiny town. Like I was totally in the boonies. It was awesome. But so I had to travel down there in a plane. And my companion, he was American, and he knew what he was doing. He'd only been there for like 3 months though. So he wasn't like super like good at speaking Spanish, but I remember I was lost those first couple of days. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just kind of like following around my companion and trying to like figure out what to do. And um, the first week was probably like one of the toughest, you know, because I remember like after the first day of proselyting and knocking on doors and talking to people, we got back to the house and we got ready for bed and stuff. And I was just laying in bed and I thought to myself, like, man, how am I going to do this for 2 years? And it's kind of difficult, but I think it's just that adjustment is the most difficult. And then once you get used to it, you can just fly through it, you know. And, you know, that first week or so, there was a lot of just like my companion trying to teach me how to do a contact, or like he'd help me kind of like, he'd give me opportunities in the lessons to like bear my testimony, you know, since I wasn't really that fluent at all and I wasn't sure how to like teach very well. So it was like, there were little baby steps, you know, but I mean, whenever you start something new, that's how you have to start, you know, just little by little. My mission means everything to me. It was such an awesome experience. It was really difficult, you know, there are really challenging times, but in the end, it's so worth it. And I would go back in a second. I would go back and I'd teach the people, and I'd walk under that hot sun and get sand in my face. I would do that again any day. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that. I honestly understand more about the gospel now than I ever did before. And I understand it on a very personal level. I understand what it means to me and what I have to do to make sure that I can return to my Heavenly Father. My testimony of the Book of Mormon definitely grew. I mean, I knew it was true before I left, but just being able to read it as much as I did just strengthened that testimony. And I don't have a shadow of a doubt that it's true. And I'm so grateful that we have it. There are so many cool stories in the Book of Mormon that can teach you so much about how you can improve your life and what you can do to make your life better and to get all these blessings from heaven. Honestly, like Heavenly Father has so many blessings that He wants to give us, and as long as we do what He asks, He will. The gospel is here to guide us and to protect us. And as soon as we stop seeing the commandments as some kind of list of rules that we have to do, and more like a guideline and a guide, honestly, it will change our lives for the better. And I'm grateful that I was able to see how the gospel changes people and how it changes their families and the happiness that it brings. My mission really did mean the world to me, and I'm so glad that I was able to go. And so all I have to say to you guys is that you should get really excited to be able to go to Santa Cruz, because it is the best mission in the entire world. It doesn't matter what other people say, it is. And you're going to have such a good time. You're going to have such awesome experiences and moments that you'll never forget. There will be people that you will meet, and they'll become like your second family. You'll come to love the Bolivian people, and you will you'll really enjoy it. So be excited. Santa Cruz is it's a really interesting city. It's really hot, and it's always sunny. It's always hot. And the weirdest thing about Santa Cruz, it's so weird, but it is so sandy. Like, it makes no sense, because like Bolivia, it's really hot, it's really humid. It's like a big chunk of Bolivia and a big chunk of the mission is in the Amazon rainforest. But like Santa Cruz is sandy, it's like a beach. And it's really windy too, so you'll be walking around and you're like walking in this beach sand. It's like really hard to walk in this beach sand. And then all of a sudden there will be this huge gust of wind, and you'll get sand in your eyes and in your ears and in your mouth, and you have to like spit it out, and you have to try to get the sand out of your eyes and stuff. And at first you hate it, but then like you come to love that so much. Like, when I think of Santa Cruz, I just think of having like sand everywhere. It's really cool. It's really weird, but in the end you end up liking it. That's how, I don't know, that's just Santa Cruz. And really it's only Santa Cruz that's sandy. Everywhere else is kind of different. If you go up north, it's all rainforest. It's all really hot. It's really humid. It rains a ton. If you go further south, it gets even hotter and it just gets more dry. It's really flat. You come to like totally forget about it, but when you see like mountains and stuff, it really freaks you out, because Santa Cruz is absolutely flat. There's not a mountain in sight. Santa Cruz is the biggest city in the entire mission, and then everywhere else you'll have kind of smaller towns. None of them are near as big as Santa Cruz, and yeah, a lot of them can get really poor really quickly. But yeah, they're really spread out. I mean, if you're going to go from Santa Cruz to some other town, you're going to either have to fly, you're going to have to take a bus, which is going to take you hours because the roads are terrible, or you can take a train. And in my whole 2 years, I never took a bus or a train to a different town. I would always fly. And yeah, depending on the town that you go to, you can fly for maybe like 1 or 2 hours to up to like 4 or 5. So it's pretty big. I mean, the farther away you get, you really start to feel it. You start to feel that you're pretty isolated. You'll come to love the Bolivian culture. Like, the Bolivian people, they're so awesome. Like I said, you know, there are those 2 different kind of cultures in Bolivia, and you'll see how they're different. They have certain aspects that are different, and sometimes the 2 different cultures can actually kind of clash with each other. Sometimes they kind of like have different like political views or stuff like that. But I mean, it doesn't matter if they're from Santa Cruz or if they're from La Paz. Like they're still such good people, and really, like, they're really open to listen to the gospel. I mean, if you just say that you have a message about Jesus Christ, like, they're most likely going to hear you out, just because everyone down there is Catholic and they believe in God, and so they'll listen to you, you know. And they think that like hearing about God is good, and so they want the blessings that you have to give them, you know. Like, they have that basic understanding, and so they're a lot more open to it. One thing that is really, really cool is like, they're very generous. The people are super generous. And like, you'll be walking around, you know, and knocking on doors and talking to people in between lessons and stuff, and you'll get really tired and it's really hot. And so you just like want something to drink. And like, whenever you go into somebody's house, they always offer you something to drink, like almost always. And so sometimes it's water, sometimes it's like some other drink, you know, mochacinchi, chicha, soya, whatever. And then most of the time they offer you soda, which is awesome. Almost everyone in Bolivia has like 2 liters of Coke. And so you'll come over and you'll come into their house and they'll ask if you want something to drink. You say yes, and then they'll just bring out a 2 liter and they'll just fill up your glass. And if you drink it all the way, they'll fill it up to the top again. So like, really good. Like, that's something that just like kind of shows how generous they are. Honestly, like, that happens all the time. It's super cool that they're so generous. If they do offer you food, they kind of expect you to eat as much as you can, you know. So just eat as much as you can, If it's something you don't like, struggle through it, but just do it for them, because a lot of the times, like, they don't have much, you know? Like, even the families that live in those tiny wooden shacks, when you come into their house to teach them, they'll have their kid run to the store and bring back a 2-liter Coke. So like, that's a lot of cash for them, but they'll do it anyways because they just understand the importance of generosity. One of the things that you do in Santa Cruz is it's just kind of the way that the people have set up their houses. They'll have their house, and then they have the yard that surrounds their house, and then there will be a giant wall that's around their whole property. So you can't really see their house, and when you're on the street, it's just like a street of walls, you know. And each house has like their door, and so you can knock on their door, you know, and they'll come out, and then you can start talking to them. And if you're in a poorer area, a lot of the times they don't have money to build walls around their houses, and so basically they'll just have like a wooden shack, and then they'll have their yard, and then they'll just put up like a barbed wire fence around their yard. And so you can't really like knock on their door because their door is just made out of wood. And so like, it's really common to just kind of like knocking on doors is just like you clap your hands, and people will hear you, and they'll kind of like poke their heads around the corner, you know, to see who's there. And then you can tell them to come on over, and they'll walk over and start talking to you, you know. And honestly, like, if you were to spend like the whole day doing contacting and just like knocking on doors, you could easily get into like 6 or 7 houses a day, which, I mean, compared to other places, that's incredible, you know. So that is definitely like, it's a big blessing for being in Santa Cruz. Just by knocking on doors, you'll have opportunities to teach. That doesn't mean that they're like super sincere or anything, but I mean, at least they'll let you in, and at least you have that opportunity to teach them something. And maybe you'll leave an impression on them later on that, you know, other missionaries will be able to take advantage of that, you know. The food in Bolivia, for the most part, is really, really good. There's a lot of like classic foods that they have that I would die for to like eat right now. I've been missing a lot of really good stuff. One of the classics is majadito. It's kind of hard to explain. It's like rice, and they've got like some meat in there, and then like deep fried bananas. I love deep fried bananas now. And they have salteñas. It's kind of like, the closest thing to a salteña is like a calzone, but it's a lot better. So you'll definitely run into one of those too. And honestly, it depends, because there are two cultures in Bolivia. There's kind of like the culture of Santa Cruz, and then there's the culture of La Paz. And Americans aren't allowed in La Paz, well, missionaries, so you'll never go there. But sometimes you'll kind of try that food in Santa Cruz, and it's definitely a lot different. You can like tell there's a difference in taste and stuff. One of the really classic foods from La Paz is called chuño. And chuño is like, the best way to describe chuño is like, imagine like a raisin, right? They get a grape and they dehydrate it. Well, chuño is the same thing, but with a potato. I don't understand how, but like, they'll get a potato and then they dehydrate it, and then they like throw it in some kind of soup or something. But I mean, I like chuño. Other elders don't like chuño, you know? Some like it, some don't. I've had a lot of weird stuff, and if you're in poorer parts of the country, you're more likely to have weird stuff. So be prepared. You're most likely gonna have stomach, liver, chicken foot, chicken heart, probably, oh wait, cow tongue, that one, yeah. Probably the weirdest, most far out food I ever had was cow brain, which actually was not that bad. You may be freaking out right now, but it's not that bad. Let me see. Chicken heart is actually like super good, man. In Santa Cruz, they just, I don't know, it's tradition, but for lunch, and lunch is like the big meal, the dinner doesn't really exist, it's lunch. But for lunch, you have sopa and segundo. Sopa is soup, and the second is kind of like, or segundo is like the entree, you know, which is, you know, rice and whatever else. But it's always, always, always sopa y segundo. Always. You're always going to have sopa y segundo. And it doesn't matter if it's like 150 degrees outside, you are still going to get like a really, really hot bowl of soup. Always. And anyways, I actually really came to like chicken heart, and like it was always like a special surprise if you had a little chicken heart floating in your soup. Like that was really cool. It was really good. Liver is kind of hard to get used to. I'm actually pretty proud of myself because at the end of my mission, I had some liver and I actually liked it. Your taste will kind of change as time goes by. Some stuff though, you never really like. Cow tongue is pretty difficult. Stomach is pretty difficult. They just have some really weird textures. They taste kind of okay. But yeah, for the most part, really good food. Oh yeah, the drinks, most of them are really, really good. There's this stuff called moco chinchi, and it's like a peach drink, and it's again, dehydrated fruit, but like they put a dehydrated peach in your cup, and then it's just like a really, really, really sweet peach drink. At first I hated it, and then it took me like a week or two before I loved it to death. There's somo. It's kind of like the same thing. Bolivians really like putting like actual food in their drinks. So like somo is like corn. Like you'll have like kind of like corn kernels, I guess, in the bottom. It's really sweet. It tastes really good. Kind of takes a little bit to get used to. There's another drink that's called chicha, and they have it like in all different kinds of like flavors. You know, there's chicha de soy, chicha, corn chicha, peanut chicha. Like there's tons of different kinds of chichas. And of all of the food in Bolivia, chicha was the most difficult for me. I cannot stand chicha. I cannot drink it. It tastes really bad to me. But I mean, other missionaries love it to death. I think they're crazy, but some do. So yeah, I mean, for the most part, Bolivian food is really good, and there'll probably be a thing or two that you don't really like, and you'll just have to like find creative ways to make it not taste as bad, like putting on insane amounts of hot sauce, or swallowing it without like chewing it or something. You know, you'll find a way. My mom was super worried about the stuff that I needed to bring, and we totally overworried it. Like, really, like anything that you are gonna need, you can buy down in Santa Cruz. Like, you can get it there. If you run out of white shirts, you can get more white shirts. You can always find ties. They're everywhere. The one thing, well, okay, there are a couple, but the one thing that I would recommend that you bring is socks. Because Bolivian socks, they're not good socks. Like, the only socks I could find were like the really thin, like formal socks, you know? And those things, like walking in a missionary shoes, walking as much as a missionary does, like those socks are gone in a week, man. Like you'll have giant holes in your socks in a week. So like, you need some good socks, and you need a lot of good socks because you're gonna run out. Like, I had like the sweat wicking kind, and those were super good. Like, they keep your feet dry. Since it's so humid and so hot, like you're gonna be sweating everywhere, and you're not gonna want that down in your feet because that just is not comfortable at all. Definitely bring a couple pairs of shoes. I had 3 pairs. I had my good pair for like zone meetings, and that's the only time I ever used them. I had my everyday pair, and then my my extra nasty pair, emergency pair. Like if I can't use my other shoes, I'd use those. But yeah, like seriously, with the shoes, don't worry too much about it. The coolest thing about Bolivia is that like they have repair shops for anything in the entire world. So like if you cut your shirt, you can get it sewed back up. If, I don't know, like if your memory card dies, they can probably try to salvage it. But yeah, if your shoes are busted, you can get your shoes fixed. And that's really cool. Like I had one pair of shoes that I wore like almost every day. And I mean, I took good care of them, and I got them repaired a couple times, and they lasted me to the very last day. So yeah, socks are really good. Also, like, what's it called? The little inserts that go on your shoe. You're gonna need those too, because you're gonna wear a hole in the heel, you know. So bring a couple extra of those. So those and socks. You're not gonna need a blanket because every house in the mission already has a ton of blankets. They gave me a pillow when I got there, so I assume they'll do the same. They'll give you like utensils, you know, forks and knives and stuff. They'll give you all that. They'll give you like a plastic bowl and a plastic plate. So really, like, don't worry too much about it. Anything that you end up like desperately needing, you can get it down in Bolivia. You could probably get it for a lot cheaper than you can get it here. So yeah. There was a point in my mission, it was right around a year and a half through. I was in this really cool area. It was the coolest area ever. I loved it to death. And then I got emergency transferred, and I was pretty upset. But I got sent to this one area that kind of like nobody wanted to go to. And I remember I was really bummed. And it was super small. Like, this area was teeny tiny, man. It took us like 3 weeks to knock on every single door in the entire area. Like, that's every single door in not that long. And so we had knocked on every single door. We knew pretty much everybody in that area. And it was a really small branch. There were maybe 10 to 20 members. It was really small. But I remember one day I was on exchanges, and the zone leader came into my area. We were just knocking on doors, you know, because a couple of our lessons had fallen through. And as we were going through, we knocked on this one door, and this lady came out, and we started talking to her, and she's like, "Oh, you guys didn't come to visit me last time you came over." And we were both like, "What? I've never seen you before." And but she kept on insisting, like, "Hey, you guys came over. I said you could come over, and you didn't." And so we're like, "Well, okay, well, let's set a date, and we will come back, and we promise we'll come." And so we set a date to come back, and that day came, you know, and we ended up meeting with them. And it was really cool because the dad was there and the mom was there, and then they had 4 kids. And so we, you know, started teaching them, and it was really good. The lessons were great, and it's always really good to teach families, you know, especially when you've got a mom and a dad and a whole bunch of kids, because the kids get into it, and the mom and dad are interested, and you can just tell that positive energy's there, you know. It's just everyone's feeling the spirit. Those lessons are super great. And so yeah, I found that family about halfway through that transfer, and 3 weeks had passed, and I got transferred. So I wasn't able to see what happened to that family. But I ended up seeing that companion of mine a couple months later, and I started talking to him about how that family was doing, and he told me that the entire family got baptized, which is so awesome. That is a family of 6. And you know, that just taught me that sometimes when bad things happen, you know, when you have difficult trials and stuff, like me leaving one of my favorite areas to go to this area that I just wasn't excited for. I mean, I ended up finding a family of 6 people that ended up getting baptized, you know. There's a reason to the difficulties that happen in the mission. I think more so than anywhere else in life, you know. You'll be able to, once the trial passes, you'll be able to see very quickly why it happened in the mission and the blessings that came from it. I think one of the biggest things that I learned on my mission was I noticed the relationship, well, maybe not the relationship, but I noticed how much God loves His children, and how much people don't understand that, or maybe how much or how little that means to them. It was really interesting because as a missionary, you feel a part of God's love for his children. You feel that in yourself, and you come to love the people that you teach and the people that you talk to. And so you start to realize just how much people mean to God, you know, how important they are to him, and how much he wants them to succeed, and how much he wants them to be happy on this earth, and how much he wants them to return to him. And before my mission, I didn't really understand that well. I mean, yeah, I believed it, but I didn't really believe it, you know. But by the end of my mission, I could definitely, like, I understood how much that meant and what it meant. And like on the flip side, I also realized like how many people just like go through their daily lives and they don't really give a thought about God at all. And they just kind of like are living day to day, and they don't really have that aspect in their lives. And without that aspect, their lives kind of lack purpose. And I mean, if they don't have that purpose, really, they'll just make whatever decision seems good at the time, you know, even if it could be like an absolutely terrible one. Like, if they don't have that purpose, it's really hard for them not to withstand temptation and sin, you know. And so I noticed that, and it really was, it was insightful to me, and just like made me kind of think about myself, and like if I really understand how much God loves me and how much of that I show back to him, you know. Well, I learned the importance of how much the family means in the plan of salvation. In the end, everything that we end up doing as missionaries is for the family, you know. And we teach people to strengthen their families, because it's as family units that we're going to return to the celestial kingdom. And I definitely began to value a lot more my own family, my mom and my dad and my sister. They became a lot more important to me, and I realized that the family is the center of everything that we do in this church. And yeah, I mean, as a missionary, you want the people to understand that, and you know that by teaching them what you do, their families will be improved.
Yeah, Santa Cruz, it was divided into, now it's divided into different missions, but before it was just, when I was there, just the one mission. And so you'd have missionaries that just stayed in the city of Santa Cruz, but then you got to provinces. There was a place called Jacuiba that I think shared land with Argentina. And then you'd go more over, and we also shared part of Brazil. So we'd have Argentina and Brazil all a part of our mission. And so any missionaries who got sent out to these provinces served in those different countries. And in Santa Cruz, I think we only had 8 stakes in the whole city. And it's a big city. I think that's all we had. And so you'd have there, which you so do not have in Utah and in many other missions, because there's so many, but you'd have a set of missionaries assigned to each ward. And so you only served in one ward, where I know here there's missionaries serving in 3 different stakes all at once, you know. And that's not at all what it was. You got to focus on your one ward, which made it very helpful in the work. A lot of members, you know, the church isn't very established there yet. It's still all really new. The chapels are beautiful and gorgeous. Of course, because the church built them, but they don't quite know the flow of things. I mean, even just to passing the sacrament is so interesting, because here where it's been going on for so long, we know that the deacons stand at the end of the pew, pass it, and we all pass it along. That's not there yet. They don't totally get that yet, so the deacons are kind of wobbling in and out of people and scoop past everybody, and I so badly wanted to be like, just stand there and pass it back and forth, you know. It's just, everything is just still so new. But the thing is, the members rely so much on the church building itself. I have never seen people use the church building itself more than people in Santa Cruz and even in Peru as well. It was a place for them to go. I mean, every activity, and there was a soccer field out back, of course, because it's South America and you have to have a soccer field everywhere you go. But there was a soccer field out back and everybody would go play there. And everybody knew that they were going to the church. You just, hey, tonight we're going to be at the church. What are you doing? Oh, we're just going to be there. And that's where people found, I think, a safe haven. The nearest temple that we had was in Cochabamba, so I never got to go there. So I never, in the Santa Cruz part of my mission, I never got to go to the temple. From what I understood, and maybe I didn't understand it very well, is I think you could get there by a ferry from Santa Cruz somehow. I don't know how it all worked and how you travel. Maybe it was a bus and then a ferry, or a ferry then a bus, or something happened. And so it was a big deal for members to plan a trip there. And you definitely, especially living in Utah where I could see 3 temples from my house alone. It's a very different perspective for these members who have the strength and the time and the courage, and probably not even really the money to go, but still save to get to the temple. And they're really a faithful people, but it is very easy to go inactive there. We found, just on the street that I lived in my first area in Santa Cruz, I remember going through the member list and seeing that there was like 5 members on our street that I had never even seen or known about, and you need to go and knock on their door and they'd never answer, things like that. So retention is a very big thing down there. Gordon B. Hinckley talked about keeping the members in, and I think that's probably the biggest struggle as a missionary when you go down there, is keeping them there, because they see it, they experience the Spirit and the change in their hearts and the baptism, and they know that it's true, but because it's not so prominent like it is in Utah, it's kind of easy to just go away and kind of get lost, and home teaching isn't as great as it is in other places where the church has been longer. It's just still so new that they, bless their hearts, are just having a hard time hanging on. But the members who are hanging on strong, for sure. It's funny because Peru and Bolivia, you think, because they're next door to each other, you think that they would be so similar, and I think that they couldn't be more different. And I remember getting into Lima the first time is not that big a deal, because you go straight to the MTC, which is, you're sheltered and you're safe, it's okay. But you go out once a week and you go visit less active people. And so you kind of start to absorb the culture and see what things are really like. And I remember getting into my first area, and I was with a North American then, and I was terrified out of my mind. It was so foreign to me, and Lima is very brown, and the sun doesn't really shine because there's this thick cloud of pollution, and rain can't even penetrate it, so it never rains in Lima. It'll mist every now and again, but it does not rain, and the sun does not. There's no blue skies, there's nothing, and people clean off their trees with brooms. It's dirty, and you've learned to just love it for some reason. And I kind of, near the end of my time in Lima, I started to feel like, I'm not supposed to be here. This is not my mission. This is not where I'm supposed to be. And I was really looking forward to getting into Santa Cruz. And it was 9 months to the day. As a sister missionary, the elders have their 1-year mark and they burn their shirt or their tie or whatever it is. And the sisters have the 9-month, which is normally when a baby would come. And so lots of sisters, including myself, would do the picture where you have a little belly, you stuff your shirt up there, have a little pregnant belly, it's your 9-month mark. And so we did that the night before I left. And in fact, the sister I was with, that I did that with, we're still really good friends to this day, just crack up about that. And then you get into Santa Cruz and it's green, and it rained that first day. Poured rain, and it's just this, everything is different there, and it's 2 totally different places. But after kind of wrapping it all up, I realized my true purpose in Lima, and it was all meant to be, that I was meant to go there for 9 months and serve the people that I did, and some of the people that I know there I'll never forget, and investigators that I had, that some are members, some aren't, and some I don't know, but that there was all a reason why I went there. And one lady in particular, I can definitely identify that I know, if anything, I was meant to go to Lima for her. And it's kind of nice to say, people say, where'd you serve? I said, well, I served in Lima, Peru, and I served in Santa Cruz, Bolivia. And they, why'd you do that? And I say, no, that's just kind of how it all worked out. And I got to do 2 cultures and 2 everything else. But it's a culture shock no matter where you go. And it was amazing how when I left Santa Cruz, I had a homesick feeling from Lima. Like, it wasn't I needed to go back to Utah. It was, I really feel sick. I want to go back to Lima. And now I realize that Bolivia was so much more in my heart than Lima ever was, but it was good. As I said with Lima is a very dirty city. It's brown, there's pollution, it doesn't rain, nothing. I got more sunburnt there though than I ever did in Santa Cruz, which is so surprising to me. And if you go check the weather right now for Lima, Peru, I promise you it will say about 76 degrees, overcast every single day. There's no change ever. I've never once checked the weather in Lima and seen any variation whatsoever. Maybe 77, maybe 75, but never more than that. And it's hilarious. And then you go to Santa Cruz, and Santa Cruz is, like I said, blue skies and sun shining, and then it's raining and thunderstorms. It's kind of like Utah, where the weather just changes like that. And we would be outside and it'd be perfectly sunny, and then 2 seconds later it's pouring rain and we're soaking wet, and you never knew what to do. There's no seasons in Lima. In Santa Cruz, there's about 2 weeks of winter and 2 weeks of summer, and they are brutal because the winter time is so cold because it's so humid. You cannot cover up enough. I mean, we had long johns on and sweats and long skirts and sweaters and coat, and nothing we could ever do would ever cover up enough for that bitter cold. And it lasted, like I said, about 2 weeks, and then it's over. And the summer, same thing. Burning hot to where you just itch, and you have to shower like 10 times a day just to get cool and kind of go through all the motions. The people there in Lima are the most friendly, happy people you could ever deal with. And really that's how Santa Cruz is as well. The people in South America, I think as a whole, are so welcoming and so kind, very set in their religion usually, which is usually Catholic. That's just kind of the religion down there. And so you'll hear a lot, I was born a Catholic and I'm going to die a Catholic. And that's what the phrase that you would hear from everybody. But the kindest people. I mean, rarely did we have a run-in. Every now and again you find somebody grumpy, but rarely did we have somebody who's just outright mean. If anything, you almost wanted them to be a little bit more mean because they were so nice to you about, yeah, come on in, come on, I'll listen to you. And then I'm not going to go to church, but I'll listen to you. You're almost coming like, just tell me if you're not going to go to church. Just tell me if you don't really want to listen to me. But truly just the kindest, sweetest people. Lima as a city it's busy and it's crowded, and there's so many different places, and there's, Miraflores, which is kind of a more ritzy place where tourists go and things like that. And Santa Cruz, it's not really a touristy town. It's set in rings, and the center ring is downtown, and you get to the first ring, and it's still kind of a classier area. The more rings you get out to the 8th ring, and there's dirt, and there's cows running the streets. I mean, there's just nothing out there. It's just kind of pure vegetation. There was a lot more culture in Santa Cruz, I thought. The German Mennonites live in Santa Cruz, that was a real shock to me when I saw all these tall white people with bleached blonde hair, and I thought, who on earth are they? And they're German Mennonite farmers, and they come into the city and sell their produce. And that's just what they do. I don't know the history I know there's a reason why they're there and what they do, but I imagine that the lush ground is perfect for all of their crops and all of their produce. So, I mean, just 2 very different places, but I'd say the people are very similar in that you just feel love and warmth from all of them. Okay, Peruvian food is so good. So good. There are some foods in Bolivia that you just cannot live without, but Peruvian food is, you have rice and chicken. I want to say potatoes are kind of the main things that you have. So really you just have a variation of that all the time. You always have rice on your plate, always. And from somebody who hated white rice, I mean, I hated it. I remember being in the MTC in Peru, and I just would gag every bite that I would take. Like, oh, this is a whole year and a half of white rice. And then it magically became a thing where if I didn't have white rice on my plate, I thought, where's my rice? I need my rice. And even with pasta, you'd still have rice. You'd have things like, they're called, in fact, I was telling someone about this the other day. They're called alfajores, and they're shortbread cookies, 2 shortbread cookies, and then you have dulce de leche in the middle, and so it's a sandwich, and then it's powdered sugar on top, and it's the most amazing cookie you'll ever find, and I still just salivate thinking about it. Tons of cakes that are gorgeous, and you'd go to, people have little shops that are in their garages, and they're kind of fenced off, and so you kind of just look in and try to see all the treats that you have, and so you'd pick out a Doña Pepa or which is kind of like a chocolate with sprinkles, and then you get something like saltine crackers with chocolate on them, and they're so wildly good you can't even imagine. And then you get to Bolivia, and it's not chicken, rice, and potatoes, it's yuca, rice, and meat. And they cook the yuca in so many different ways, and you think you would never eat a yuca root, but it's actually very, very tasty depending on how it's cooked. And so the focus is much more meat, and you have plates like majadito, which is, it's kind of a brown rice that has some sort of flavoring to it that I don't know, and then charque, which is, I think it was kind of shredded beef or something. I never knew what it was. I knew it was charque, and I knew it wasn't chicken, so that's as far as I could tell. And then you get fried plantains and a fried egg, and you put it on top. It sounds so incredibly disgusting. It's so good. And every missionary knew that majadito was a great plate. And another plate they had was salchipapa, which is French fries and hot dogs. And it's just cut up, and you eat it with a toothpick, and that's how you eat it. So the food there is so different. You completely have to get readjusted. So the languages are also very different. And so you'll kind of use slang that you learned in Peru, and you use that in Bolivia, and they're thinking, I don't even know what you're talking about. And it was funny how lots of things just really did not translate. In Bolivia, there's Spanish, and there's Quechua, and there's Aymara. And so there's 3 different languages, and I think it's the indigenous people mostly who speak Aymara and Quechua. But you'd meet a lot of people that you'd have to know something about that language, or at least have somebody there to translate for you, because quite a few people actually did know. It was more out in the provinces where I just stayed in the city. Mostly in the city we were pretty okay, but you get out to the provinces, and these people only speak that language. In Lima, they are shockingly fast, but not as fast as Chileans. Chileans speak really fast Spanish, and so you'd meet any Chilean and you're like, whoa, I don't know, I don't even know what you're saying. You're speaking so fast. And the thing is, when you get to Santa Cruz, they never say their S's at the end of a word. So in a word like pues, which is kind of like well, or something like that, they'd say pue. Santa Cruz wouldn't be Santa Cruz, it'd be Santa Cruz. And so you never quite understood what they were saying at first, because you're used to Lima where they enunciate so much better. Then you get to Santa Cruz and they kind of mumble a little bit more, and the S's are not all there, and you have no idea what they're saying. And it was kind of funny to have them listen to me, a Lima learned person in Spanish, trying to speak Santa Cruz Spanish, and it just never really connected the dots. But learning the language, when I was in the Peru MTC, I was the only sister, I was the only American sister, and I think there were 7 elders with me. And so they put the Americans in one class, and then they put the Spanish speakers in a different class. And then if we were outside of a classroom, I had a companion who was a Spanish speaker, and we were with the Latinos. But I sat in that class, and sisters at that time, now it's different because they've changed the age, but sisters at that time were always older than the elders. And so the elders were still kind of just out of high school and still, this is all funny. And I was serious. And so I would listen so intently to every single word that they would say in Spanish, because they'd only speak Spanish to us, which is the whole point of why we went to the Peru MTC, is to learn Spanish. And I found that if I just listened to everything that they said as closely as I could and never took my ears away, I understood the language so much quicker. And the elders would kind of turn to me like, what does that mean? I'd be like, listen. So I had to tell them, and then finally we all kind of got in the groove of things. But anybody learning a foreign language, I mean, hopefully now I think the church has in place a lot where they're sending the missionaries to an MTC where that language is spoken. And just do your best. And it is hard and it is overwhelming. I was the only American sister there. And so for me to be up in our rooms with the sisters was so overwhelming to me and lonely because nobody spoke my language and I didn't speak their language. I was only there a couple of days. And by the time they came in and it got really lonely down there, but I found friends in the elders and was able to be with them, and they took care of me, and many of them I still know to this day, and we still talk, but you gotta pay attention. And by the time I got to my first area, my companion was a North American, and she said, "I'm shocked at how well your Spanish is." I thought, thank you. It really paid off, and it really did excel very quickly. And we didn't, I think it's kind of more of a choice to study the language in your morning routine. You can, if you're learning a different language, I think the White Handbook says that you can stay in another hour or half hour and study the language. I didn't find that to be necessary. I felt like our time was much better spent out there in the field teaching and learning that way. I think you learn just as good, if not better, doing that. So I really don't think that's necessary. Some may think so, and that's great, but I didn't feel like it was a big need at that time. Lima has earthquakes, and they're significant, and they happen quite frequently. The first one that I was in happened while I was in the MTC, and I remember the mission president, President Groberg, is up there, and he's talking, and all of a sudden it just starts to shake, and we're sitting there like, what do we do? And he and his wife are so used to it, they just kind of like hold on to the table and smile, and all of us are like, oh my gosh, what's going on? But the real earthquake that I experienced, it was the most surreal moment. My companion and I are standing out in the street. We are standing right at the edge of our zone. And so the minute we crossed that street, we were in the elder zone. We're sitting right there on that corner, and we're talking to this lady, and I must not have been paying attention very well. I still didn't speak Spanish very well. And we see the road is right here. I see the road go just quickly, just kind of like a wave almost. So I look, and it kind of caught her eye too, and she looks, and then all of a sudden it just starts to shake everywhere. And I don't know what that first thing was to indicate that an earthquake was coming, but it started to shake, and it was crazy. And so the ladies, "Hermanas, come on!" And the building is right next to us, and it's shaking, and the glass is making popping noises and things like that, like everything is going to break, and everybody's running, and we don't know what to do. And she tells us to run, and my companion's like, "But that's the elder zone. We can't cross that zone." I said, "It doesn't matter. It's an earthquake." So we run across the street and kind of let it all ride out, and it lasted for a few seconds. It was crazy. I mean, nothing broke, nothing, things like that. There was a minor damage inside houses and things like that, nothing huge, but it was frightening. And I know that there was an earthquake there, I think maybe 5 years before in Inca. And it was huge. So that's something to really get ready for in Lima, is just get used to earthquakes. It's okay. Everybody knows how to handle them, and it was frightening. If they let you wear sandals, which I think they do in Santa Cruz now, bring sandals. Birkenstocks were the best thing I could have ever had. And I'll tell you why. Because you get these closed shoes, and you really don't want Dansko shoes that are the thick, heavy shoes. Those are great for if you're going maybe up in the mountains and things like that. When you're just in the city, it is too hot and too heavy to wear those. And so those are kind of nice maybe for if you're going to a zone meeting or something like that. You want to dress nicer, great. But I had kind of some tennis shoe Mary Janes that I wore, but they give you get ingrown toenails. That's what a lot of missionaries got down there, and I don't know how often that happens with other missionaries. I'd imagine probably fairly frequently. So if you can bring sandals, sisters, probably this would only apply for, bring them. I know that they can wear pants now, and there are some places that you're really going to want to wear pants, the sisters. Now the dress code has changed so much. I wish I'd had that. We had to dress so... People thought we were nuns. Oh, are you the Jehovah's Witnesses? Are you the nuns? No, that's not us. We're the Mormons. Oh, interesting. You dress kind of like nuns. Yeah, we kind of have to right now. So thankfully things have changed with that. A lot of hygiene things you kind of think that you can't buy down there. You can. Everything's there. I packed a lot of soaps and, other hygiene things that you need, and there's just really no need for that. Just get it through the MTC, you know, that first 6 weeks wherever you're going, and then after that you really just don't need it. You'll want rain gear in Santa Cruz. It's going to rain on you, and it's going to rain real good. And you'll want warm clothes for that winter time. It's cold. Bring long johns, if not anything, for that 2 weeks. And you'll probably never wear them. I don't think I ever wore them after that. It was just that 2 weeks that you wanted to do that, and then that's it. And bring bug spray. And I had bug spray with like 100% DEET in it. I mean, just crazy. I didn't even dilute it or anything like that. And I'd spray it in my bed at night because I'd get bites on me. I'd wake up with all these bites all over my legs. And if I just sprayed my bed once every 2 weeks, I stayed perfectly clear of them. So yeah, those would definitely be things you'd want to bring. If you're sensitive to skin, I'd bring sunscreen. In Lima, you'll get scorched. I wasn't too sensitive to skin, so I didn't worry about it. But yeah, many missionaries got really burnt in Lima. I don't know if I've heard that if the sun is kind of trying to penetrate through the clouds, it makes it stronger. I don't know what it is, but for Lima, you're definitely going to want the sunscreen. There were many experiences that, there was one that I've never really told anybody, and mostly because I don't know if anybody would appreciate its value as much, but I think that it's an important thing to share. We were in Lima, and we were knocking on doors, and knocking and knocking. This was my toughest area in Lima. It was a much more rich area. It was in the area where there was a Chili's and the zoo and the movie theater and the mall. I mean, it was a really difficult area to be in. The more humble area you in, the humble the people were. And we knocked and knocked and knocked. I bet we knocked for hours. And not only did they close the door on us, they slammed the door on us. And usually it was with a very mean thing that they said. And I remember just before we knocked on this door, this lady screamed at us and called us these horrible names. And I'm trying to keep my cool. And so is my poor companion. She's from Guatemala. And we were done. We were done. And we had the energy in us to knock on one more door. And we opened the door, and it's this man, I don't even remember his name now. And he accepts us in. It was the first door we'd gotten in. And we had knocked for hours. I'm not kidding, hours. And we get inside the house, and his little daughter is named Patricia. And she was maybe five or six, I'd say. And she had Down syndrome. And she was sitting far away from us, and we're beat and we're shattered. And he starts saying something, and then I respond to him. And then all of a sudden, Patricia starts to come over to me. And I got the feeling that Patricia was a very, very aggressive. Sometimes I know children with Down syndrome, they're just strong and they're aggressive and they don't really know what they're doing, and they'll grab your hair. They'll go like that. So she comes over to me, and the fear in his eyes, I mean, he thought, she's going to do something to the missionary. And I'm kind of talking to him, whatever, like that. And I kind of had my hand down, and Patricia reaches over and grabs my hand and just does this and holds my hand and puts it up against her cheek. And my companion looked over and saw what was going on, and because of what I know and what we all know about children with Down syndrome and other handicaps, because we know that they got a straight ticket to heaven, that was no doubt to me or my companion oh man, I haven't even told the story, that sweet little girl was just a little piece of heaven that Heavenly Father just gave us. And it's such a simple thing, you know, and that's why I never really shared it, because it may not mean much to anybody, but to have her just sit and hold my hand, and I just stroked her hand like this and just continued talking and acted like nothing was happening. And my companion and I walk out that door and just kind of had this face like this, where we couldn't believe what had happened. And we just cried and cried and cried, because we knew so well that Heavenly Father was just trying to get an expression of love towards us straight from Him. And I have no doubt that that's exactly what that little girl was. We never saw him again. You know, we never found him again. It never happened again. But my goodness, to have Heavenly Father reach out in such a sweet, precious way with that precious little girl. I will never, not that I ever looked at them in any different way, you know, anybody with Down syndrome, but now they hold such a special place in my heart, because I know that they're just little drops of heaven here on earth for all the rest of us. And it just was the sweetest experience I've ever had. The reason I knew that I was supposed to go to Lima was this woman named Christina. And Christina was roughly 60, 65, somewhere around there. So she's an older woman. Her husband had passed away a few years before that. And she was the friend of the people we lived with. So when I first got to that area, I didn't have a companion. I just had a girl from the ward with me. And so I'm starting from square one. I think the area had been closed for a few weeks before I got in there, so it's kind of all new. And they said, we'll go visit Christina. She's just right across the street there. So great. So we go visit her, and she gives us the party line. You know, I'm Catholic. I'm going to live Catholic, and I'm going to die Catholic. That's just how it is. And I said, okay, well, can we still come talk to you? She said, sure. So we talked to her and taught her different things. And there was one day where we taught her about the fall of Adam and Eve. And she was so shocked and had learned so much about how the fall was necessary and how, essentially children are not punished for that. We don't suffer for Adam's transgressions. And to tell her that, at the time I didn't understand why it was such a big deal, but to tell her that brought her so much warmth and clarity. And she said, I can't believe I've never known this. I can't believe what this book has told me, the Book of Mormon, obviously. And so we testified to her and we invited her to be baptized. And she said, yeah, I want to go to church, but yeah, I want to be baptized. And anyway, it happened that she got to the point where she was ready to be interviewed. And the elder comes downstairs. We had her go upstairs with him and be interviewed. And we were in our house with the other family that we lived with. And he comes downstairs and he flashes the number. I don't remember what number it is, but it's a number on the interview. And if they fail that question, they have to be interviewed by the mission president in order to get baptized. So whatever number that was, and it was a 7 or something, he flashes it to me, and I thought, what? Because that means she had an abortion, or she had a homosexual relationship, or something bigger than we had been used to dealing with. And I was shocked. And so we went and talked to her the next day, and she told us that her husband had told her she had 2 abortions, and her husband, in a way, made her do it. I mean, he wasn't mean, he wasn't forceful. It just kind of was a thing, like, you got to get this done, And she has lived with that guilt for years. I mean, she's 60 something years. She's lived with that. She's been baptized in church after church after church after church, trying to get that feeling, that guilt to go away, and it never went away. And so we told her that if she's baptized with the right authority, she really will be clean and she'll feel it. And so she was interviewed by the mission president, got straightened out, no problem. We take her to get baptized. That was an event all in of itself. I mean, Heavenly Father did not want this woman to get baptized, or not Heavenly Father, Satan did not want her to get baptized. Heavenly Father very much did. And the water was out at the chapel, so we couldn't fill the font. We were trying to get everybody to the stake center, and somebody didn't have the keys, and then everybody missed the buses to get there, and somebody got robbed on our way there. I mean, it was just chaos. And we finally get there, and we got permission from our mission president. It was 10:30 at night. We're supposed to be home by now. And she goes in the waters, and she comes out, and I'm sitting there, and I'm in the bathroom waiting for her, and I've got a towel. And she didn't plug her nose. And so she inhaled all this water. So she comes up laughing, and she's like, you didn't plug my nose for me. And she's just laughing, and she walks out of the font, and I can still see her face as crystal clear today as I could then. And she walks out, and I grab her and I hold her in the towel like this. And she just said, it's gone. It's gone. And that is truly the moment that I will never forget from my mission. That was truly the peak right there. And it happened to be, so soon in my mission. And I just held her and I said, of course it's gone. That's what we've been trying to tell you. It's gone. It's real. You can move on from it. And anyway, it was the sweetest moment with her. She's one I'll never forget. And I know for sure, if for any other reason, I went on my mission for her. If nothing else happened, and I think that other things did happen, if nothing else happened, that happened. And from what I've heard, she's gone through the temple now. I think she's sealed, her and her husband. I think that the man who baptized her was the guy we lived with that introduced us to her. I think he posed as her husband, things like that. And it was just a very sweet moment. So I think she's still going strong. Bolivia is really where my heart is. I know I went to Lima, for reasons like Christina and other people, and I met people there that are just I love them so dearly. I could name them all, but I'm not going to. And I probably still talk to more Peruvians than I do anybody else. But there was something about Bolivia where I knew I was supposed to be there. I knew that's where the Lord called me. And I found a greater peace there. I don't know why. I just found that. And the people that I lived with, it was mostly in my first zone. It was called Paraíso, which is paradise. And it really was a paradise to me. I had some really difficult, that companion especially, really difficult companions in that area, but it didn't matter because I had these people with me, and we were kind of just a family. And we had in our house, there's a gate right up at the front. There's a lady who lived here, and she had a restaurant that she owned that would be open for lunch. So, she lived here, and then there's this gate. You'd open this gate, and then there's all these different houses, well, many tiny houses. And so it was us, and then another family, and we really did become a family. And some of them were members, and some of them were not. And one lady there who was not a member, she did not like the missionaries. With her living right across the hall, essentially, from us, the missionaries before me were very forceful with her, hey, you got to come to church with us. And it just bothered her. And so I backed off a lot when I got in that area. And because I knew the history with that, really backed off. And she became a really close friend. And she listened more if you do that. And so we do family home evenings in our little courtyard there, get everybody together and watch movies. And she'd come and watch, and she'd ask questions, and she showed a lot of interest. And then let me tell this story, and then I'll kind of tell the outcome of both. And another lady, my friend Julio Cesar, is just one special person in my heart. He was a recent convert when I got there, and I just adore him. And he was so helpful to us when I was in that ward. His mom was the same way. The missionaries pushed her, and she didn't like it. She was very Catholic. And so I stopped asking her about it. I stopped asking her to come to lessons. I just stopped. And I just warmed up to her. And I talked to her about cooking, and I talked about this and that. And she warmed up to me a lot. And people were shocked at how much she just grew to love me, and I her, of course. And she showed up to General Conference when we showed it at the Stake Center, and she came to church, and she did all sorts of things that she had never ever once done. And the thing when you go on a mission and you try so hard to connect with these people, as you become so attached, and where these people became my family. The lady that we live with that I said started showing up to our family home evenings, she had a miscarriage, and so our president gave us permission to take her to the hospital and help her kind of get everything taken care of. I got transferred right after that, found out that she died as a result of that. She died not long after I left. And I didn't find out about that until I got home, because how would I know? And Julio Cesar's mom just passed away 2 weeks ago, and I don't know what she had. I saw pictures of her very skinny and kind of emaciated. And the thing that I miss most are those people that I touched that weren't even members. And not even that so much that I touch them, but they touch me. And that a friendship that you build. And I don't think missionary work is all about baptizing. I think that's the goal. And your goal is to baptize these people so that they can have eternal families and things like that. Absolutely. Some people just aren't ready for that step yet. And so your job is to serve them and love them and bring them closer to you. And don't push them and push them and push them and push them. That's only going to push them further and further away. Just love them, talk to them, get to know them, and joke around with them and have fun. And we had so much fun. And these two women who I just adored and knew that they were kind of taking steps forward are now both gone. And I feel so grateful to know that at least I know that between me and them, it was a good experience. And hopefully in this next life, they learn more and accept the gospel eventually. But it's those people, it's that family that I just feel like I really did have down there that I miss the most. Favorite food would be majadito for sure. That rice with fried plantains and fried eggs. It was just good. And for some reason, that mixture of food just works, and you have to just eat all of it. Loved it. So puppets, the word for puppets is títeres. But that's a big word that I never knew. And then calcetines is socks. So like a sock puppet is socks, calcetines. And then underwear is calzones. So I'm talking about títeres, talking about puppets. You know, puppets. And I said, you can make puppets out of socks. But I didn't say calcetines, which is socks. I said calzones, which is underwear. So I'm talking about, yeah, you can make, out of underwear, you can make puppets, and you can do this with your kids, and da-da-da. And they're looking at me like, well, what? What are you talking about? Why would you make it out of underwear? I'm like, you know what I'm talking about, underwear. And da-da-da. And then finally they're like, do you mean socks? And I thought, oh, they should not put those words so close together. And there's so many words in Spanish that are just enough different to make it think like pera is a pear, perra is a female dog. And so when you're talking about a pear and you're saying pera, but you're saying a perra, and you're doing a little bit more of a roll on your tongue, you're actually saying a female dog, which can be turned into something not nice, or can just be saying that you're eating a dog, and people don't understand it. I mean, it's so hard because so many words are so similar but enough different that you really have to know the difference. But it's embarrassing, and they just laugh at you, and some days you feel kind of foolish, but at the end of the day you gotta just laugh, because if they were to try it in English, they would struggle too. So it just happens. It's too funny. It's funny to look back on and think about it. Maybe not as funny then, but it is funny now. There was one experience, I don't want to put a bad taste in anybody's mouth about Santa Cruz, but one time we were in the market, this is in my first area, and we're cutting through, the market was huge. We're trying to cut through this little place to try and get back to our house for lunch that day, because we had a lesson somewhere over on the opposite side of the area. And we're cutting through, and I said, let's go down this street, because there's a member who lives on that street. If we say hi to them, ask them how they're doing, whatever like that, great. And as we're starting to walk down there, somebody grabbed my companion's bag, and she kind of turns around and says, hey, somebody just grabbed me. And they're all little, and I was big, and I was heavier definitely in that time. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm bigger. You just come stand in front of me. So she stands in front of me, and I'm kind of pushing her through. And I said, hold on to your bag. Don't let anybody grab it. I'll push you through, whatever. So it's super crowded. We're walking through, and we turn that corner right where that member lives, right where she has her store. And these men just circle us. And I thought, what's going on? So we're both kind of looking around, not sure what's going on. And one of them comes up to me, grabs me by my shirt, and kind of lifts himself up because I'm so tall, and spits right in my face. And I was so shocked what was going on. And then they all just started spitting and spitting and spitting, and we're just soaking wet with spit. And I'm so shocked. I'm thinking, why are they spitting on us? And I'm thinking, okay, I remember Joseph Smith having this happen. This happened very, people rejecting the church, people would do this. And so I'm thinking that this is what's going on. And they're reaching in our bag. So they're spitting on us to distract us from them trying to rob us. And I swat his hand away, and I probably really shouldn't. They tell you to leave money right there so that if someone wants to take it, they just take it and they go. And I just kind of had a gut reaction and hit his hand away, and I'm trying to push out of the way, and the member is right there, and I can see her, and she's saying, Hermanas, get in here, get in here. And I push my companion, and they kind of let her go, and then they finally let me go, and we run in there, and I'm furious, and I open up my bag, and I say, all I have is a Book of Mormon. Is that what you want? And I'm just going crazy, and some lady walks in the store, and it was kind of like a TV show. It's just funny now that I hear it. And she says, they've got a car outside, and they're waiting for you. Don't go out there. And I thought, okay, we won't go out there. So we waited and waited and waited, and finally they drove away. And at that time, I got to tell you, as a missionary, I was more mad than I was scared. And I think any missionary could probably relate. When you go to a dangerous place, and Santa Cruz is a dangerous place, and so you really have to be careful. You still, even though it's dangerous, you don't feel like you're unsafe. And so I was more mad at that time, and we went home, we called president and told him what happened, and he said, do you need to be transferred out? I said, nah, I think it's just kind of a whatever. And people ended up telling us that if you go in the market that time, there were men that would try and rob you and things like that. And it came to a point where us as missionaries in Santa Cruz would kind of start telling our stories and, okay, who had the worst one? And you had a machete pulled on you? Well, I got spit on. Oh, you win. And, it just kind of became a thing. And of course, it's not something to be taken lightly necessarily, but you do know that if you're being smart and if you're doing the right thing, if you're obeying the mission rules, you're going to be okay. It was the craziest experience I have ever had. And I will never forget that day. I remember it so vividly in my head that I just can't even believe that it happened. It was just crazy. I really feel like I changed as a whole person. And I'll tell you why. My mission president always told us that your mission doesn't change you, it's the atonement that changes you. And I always tried to incorporate that into my life. And I went through a hard time on the mission being, I was, very personal here, I was extremely overweight. I gained a lot of weight in the mission, and it became a very difficult thing because many who have been there will agree, people are very forward about that. If you're fat, they'll be like, wow, you're fat. And in America, you don't do that. South America doesn't matter. It's, oh, you must like the food. You're huge, look at you. And it, especially as a woman, it became a very difficult trial to pass through. And that's what I say. I had to stop thinking about myself and what other people were telling me, and had to focus on the people. And once I started to do that, things kind of started to change for me. And there truly is a change in my face from that point and afterward. And it's because I was trying so hard and so not perfectly to learn everything that Heavenly Father wanted me to learn. And I had a companion who was difficult, is the nicest word I can use on her. And she and I just not a day did we get along. She was 40 years old. I was 22. And she was just mean. I mean mean. She would say the nastiest things to me. And I just didn't understand what was going on. And I'd say something mean right back. And I was still kind of in my unhappy and I'm overweight and whatever the thing is. And I finally realized it's not doing me any good. She doesn't care that I'm saying these mean things to her. It's not helping. She doesn't feel bad. I'm not gaining anything in this. And I finally decided that I wasn't going to do that. That I knew that the Savior wasn't going to do that. That he, it talks about how he stood silent with his accusers. And I thought, I'm going to sit quiet. And I'm just going to say, I'm sorry. And if she tells me something that I'm doing wrong, which she did very frequently, I'm going to be quiet. And I did that for the rest of the time, and I survived it. That's all I can say is I survived it. And so did she, for that matter. and we got through it. And from that moment on, I just changed into a different person. And it wasn't just learning that kind of kindness, and it wasn't even necessarily losing weight, as it was letting the Savior kind of change the person that I was and not judge too harshly other people like people had judged me or like she had judged me or anything like that, but just kind of changing into a person where I believe in just kindness. And that's something that I will take with me and teach my children forever. And maybe people learn that off their mission, but for me, that was something I had to learn on my mission. In Lima, it definitely had to have been, it was seafood day. There's always a person who cooks you food, so you never cook your own food. In Lima, somebody cooked all three foods for you, all three meals. In Santa Cruz, they only cooked lunch for you, which was much better for me, in my opinion. But in Lima, they gave me and my companion a seafood day. And so you'd have soup, and the soup, I swear, was them getting a bowl, scooping it from the sea, putting some seaweed in there and warming it up, maybe sprinkling a little bit of pepper in there. In Santa Cruz, we did have armadillo one time, which was really fun. And they grilled it up and things like that. And not to sound cliche, but it did taste like chicken. But the closer the meat you get to the shell is the most flavorful meat. And it was actually really good. I think the value of hard work and not thinking about myself, that I noticed that any time I really struggled in the mission is when I was focusing on myself. And the minute that I came to that realization and started looking outward and thinking of them, did the mission just become easier? Just everything seemed to go better. And not necessarily that we were baptizing like crazy per se, but that the work was just sweeter. And I did learn the value of hard work. I learned how to study scriptures, and I learned how to study just in general. I mean, my grades, I went to the University of Utah, my grades at the U were not great before I left. And then when I came back, it was this whole different thing because I learned how to work hard. I learned how to study and learn how to focus and learn how to do all these things. And they're just two valuable lessons that you can learn in other ways, I think, but a mission is much more of a hybrid kind of way to learn all those things. And it's truly changed me, and not to mention the knowledge you get of the gospel. If you think that you can't go on a mission because you don't know anything about the church, think again, because you'll learn. You'll just learn. I thought I knew a lot of stuff, and I didn't know as much as I thought I did. And you get to the MTC in Provo, and they have you call people in the referral center to practice. And I remember some guy says, "So what Bible do you use?" And I had no idea what he meant. King James Version, of course. I mean, why didn't I think of that? But I'm on the spot, and I'm thinking, the Bible. He said, "But which Bible?" And I said, the Bible in Jesus's time. And he just kind of, "What?" And I said, like about Jesus, that Bible. And he's like, "But which version?" And I was like, "Oh, the King James. Oh, okay, there you go." Oh, kind of finished that. And I walked away that day thinking, what am I doing here? I don't know anything. So embarrassing, just so embarrassing. And the knowledge that I gained from that day to where I'm now is just a world of difference. And there's no real, you just need to know that it's true. That's all you need to know. And the rest will just come when you need it to come. And there's nothing to be worried about. And people are there to help you and back you up. And you're going to embarrass yourself sometimes. And that's okay. You'll be shocked at the amount of knowledge you gain if you study. Well, if you have just opened up your call and you're going to Lima, Peru, or Santa Cruz, Bolivia, I hope that you feel at peace with that. I know that I did, and I was shocked that I felt at peace with it. If not, pray to find that peace. And I will tell you, at least for me, the minute I opened my call is when all the adversity came. Things got harder. It was harder to push through. And I even asked my Father, is this what I'm supposed to do? Because it seems like there's so much rejection coming my way. Am I supposed to be doing this? Because it just doesn't feel right. And I just made a little deal with Heavenly Father. Either you send me my husband or I'm going. And he never sent me my husband, so I went for it. He sent him to me now, but he didn't send it to me then. I knew that was the right thing to do. Do not come home. Unless something really happened, don't come home. It's really, really hard. But it is so rewarding, and you will never regret staying on your mission. You will never regret it. You'll regret coming home. And I know that that's a very hard thing for some missionaries to do, and some just have to do it. But you'll never, ever regret staying there. And don't ever forget your testimony when you come home. Because so many missionaries that I know for a fact that I was with that saw miracles that I saw are gone from the church. And it's just not worth it. That's just not the joy and the happiness that Heavenly Father wants us to feel. Don't forget it. And above all things, have a good time out there. It's fun. There's things to go see, things to experience. Just have fun, lighten up, enjoy the country, enjoy the culture, try different things, and work really hard, of course. But I think with hard work comes playing really hard too. And I think that every missionary needs to learn to just enjoy while you're out there and not take yourself so seriously. I had a few companions that were just so serious about how this, and I thought, just lighten up, just go with the flow, see how things go, be happy. And once we started doing that is when we had our greatest successes. So bottom line, don't give up. Don't come home. It's not worth it. Just pray really hard that you won't be homesick or whatever like that. I got really homesick in the MTC in Provo. And I just prayed and I prayed and I prayed. Heavenly Father, please don't let me be homesick. I don't want to go home. My brothers all serve missions. I can do it too. I know I can. That pride kept me there. And a special experience that I'll share real fast is I grew up next door to President Rasband, or Elder Rasband. He was a president back when this happened. But Elder Rasband of the 12, he's my next door neighbor. And when I got my papers turned in, my dad said, why don't you go talk to Elder Rasband and tell him that you're going to get your mission call and give you some advice. So I went over there, knocked on his door, and he's there in his gym shorts and his t-shirt, and hey, how's it going? And I told him what's going on. He said, well, where are you going? I said, I don't know yet. He said, well, come back when you know your call. And I said, okay. And I never went back because I was just too nervous. I didn't want to bug him. I know he was busy. He was in the 70 at that time. And right before I left, the Sunday before I left, he came to our sacrament meeting. And the bishop came to me and said, Lindsay, you know, President Rasman, or Elder Rasman, whatever he was at the time, wants to talk to you in my office. And I thought, I'm in trouble. And so we go in there and he said, you never came and talked to me. And I said, no, I'm sorry, I didn't. I just thought you were too busy. He said, I'm never too busy. And so he gave me advice about Bolivia. He had been there before. And he said that when he was a mission president in New York City, he said, I never cared why anybody came on a mission. I don't care if their dad told them they'd get a car. I don't care if they thought they'd get a good-looking spouse when they got home, or whatever it was. He said, I never cared as long as they learned why they were there when they got there. And that's the advice for any missionary. Even if you think maybe you're not going for the right reasons or things like that, pray that you'll get there. Pray that you'll find those right reasons. And he said that any missionary who did that would find it. And it's definitely worth your while. There's no reason to not do it. And sisters, you mean so much to the mission work. There truly is a work that only you can do that the elders can't, and vice versa. The elders can do work that only you can't. And you really mean a lot out there, and the world needs you. So don't be afraid to serve. A year and a half is not that long, and you know what? Life goes on, and you're really blessed for it. So.